Welcome back to AU Family Channel, and thank you so much for being here. It truly means the world to have you as one of our loyal listeners. If our stories have ever touched your heart, we are so grateful that you keep coming back to spend this time with us. So find somewhere comfortable, take a slow, deep breath, and let us begin today's story, together.
When I was 30 years old, I stood in an empty classroom and opened a cardboard box with my own name written on the side in green ink. Inside were 140 letters, every single letter I had ever written to my English teacher, from the angriest to the ugliest, to the one I wrote when I did not think I would make it to 18. She had kept all of them, in order, with her own notes clipped to the front of every bundle. I was a kid that everybody had already written off, and this woman had been quietly keeping every piece of me for 12 years.
I need you to understand what I was like at 14, because it matters. I was angry. Not sad, not misunderstood, just angry in a way that made adults tired. I had been suspended twice by October. My report card said things like, "does not apply himself," and "disruptive influence." I had heard 3 different teachers describe me as a lost cause, and one of them said it while I was standing close enough to hear every word. So I decided that if that was what I already was, I might as well be very good at it. I stopped trying. Failing on purpose hurts a lot less than failing by accident.
Mrs. Okafor taught English in room 12 at the end of the science hallway where the heater rattled all winter long. She was a small woman with a very steady voice, and she never once raised it, which I found deeply unnerving. On the first day, she told us that every Friday we would write her a letter, not an essay, a letter about anything at all. She said she would read every one and she would write back to everyone. The whole class groaned. I laughed out loud. I thought it was the stupidest thing I had ever heard, and I told my friends she would quit by Christmas. My first letter was 3 sentences long, and it was designed to make her give up. I wrote that the assignment was a waste of my time and hers, that nobody actually cared what I thought, and that she should save the ink. I signed it with my last name, only, the way a stranger would. I handed it in on the Friday, feeling very clever. I was certain she would hand it back with a red mark and a detention slip, and then I could go back to being exactly who everyone had already decided I was. Instead, she did something I was not prepared for at all. On Monday, my letter came back with a full page of her handwriting folded inside it, green ink. She wrote that she was sorry my time felt wasted, and that she would try to be worth it. She wrote that she had noticed I used the word actually, and that people who use that word usually have something they are trying very hard not to say. Then she asked me a question. She asked what I would write about if I knew for certain that nobody would laugh. She did not mention the detention. She did not mention my tone. She just asked, and then she waited a whole week for my answer. So I tested her. That is what kids like me do when somebody is kind to us for no reason we can see. The next week, I wrote something cruel. I wrote that her classroom smelled like old paper, that her books were boring, that she was wasting her life on kids who would forget her name by June. I got meaner every single Friday for a month. I wrote that she only did this so she could feel like a good person. I wrote that I bet she did not even read them. I was hunting for the exact place where she would finally give up on me,
like everybody else had. I never found it. Every Monday, with fail, my letter came back with a page of green ink folded inside. She answered the cruel ones just as seriously as if they had been kind. When I said she did not read them, she quoted my own sentence from 3 weeks earlier back to me, word for word, and asked if I still felt that way. When I said she was wasting her life, she wrote that it was her life to spend and that she had chosen. She never once told me I was being rude. She never told my mother. She just kept writing back, week after week, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Somewhere around February, without ever deciding to, I started telling her the truth. I wrote that my father had left in the spring and had not called since, not on my birthday, not at Christmas. I wrote that my mother worked nights at the hospital and slept through the days, and that our house was so quiet I had started leaving the television on just for the company. I had never said any of that out loud to a single living person. I said it to a woman I saw for 40 minutes a day on lined paper, because paper does not look at you with pity while you are talking. The letters became the only honest place in my life. I wrote about the fight I did not start and got blamed for anyway. I wrote about failing maths and being far too proud to ask anyone for help. And one Friday in March, on a page I had torn out of a different book because I could not wait until class, I wrote the worst sentence I have ever written. I wrote that I did not think I was going to make it to 18, and that I did not think anybody would particularly mind. Then I handed it in and went home and honestly forgot about it, because words on paper do not change anything. That Monday, she did not hand my letter back in class. She asked me to stay behind. She sat on the desk beside mine, not behind her own, and she said one thing. She said, I would mind. That was all of it. She did not lecture me. She did not tell me I had so much to live for. She just told me the plain truth, that there was one person in that building who would mind. And then she asked if I wanted to eat lunch in room 12 instead of out in the yard. I said yes. I ate lunch in that rattling classroom for the next 2 years. Things changed slowly, the way real things always do. She started leaving books on my desk without saying a word about them. Not the ones from the syllabus, books about angry young men who turned out fine in the end. I read them so I would have something to argue with her about on Friday. My letters got longer. My spelling got better because I did not want her to see the mistakes. I passed English. Then I passed everything. Nobody threw a party. The teachers who had called me a lost cause never noticed, and I never told them. I only ever told her in green ink on paper. And then I did the thing I am most ashamed of in my whole life. I got older, and I got embarrassed. In my final year, I decided the letters were childish, that I had grown out of them, that needing a teacher was something for the kid I used to be and was not anymore. I stopped writing them properly. I dashed off half a page about nothing at all. She wrote back exactly the same as always, a full page every single time. I told myself she was just doing her job. On the last day of school, I walked past room 12, saw her at her desk, and kept walking. I did not thank her. I want to be very clear about that, because it is the center of this entire story. I never said thank you. I never wrote a last letter. I got my results, and I left.
and I went out into my life. And Mrs. O'Coffer slowly became a warm little story I told at parties about a teacher I once had. I told myself I would go back one day. I moved cities. I got a job writing marketing copy for a living, which is a joke I never got to tell her. 12 years went by exactly the way years do, quietly, and then all at once. I found out from a message in an old school group I had muted years earlier. Mrs. Okafor had a stroke in the spring. She was retiring, and the school was holding a small afternoon for her before they cleared out room 12 for good. My thumb hovered over that message for a very long time. I remember standing in my kitchen with the kettle going and feeling something cold move right through my chest, because I understood properly for the first time that she was a real person with an actual ending, and I had been treating her like a place that would always be there. I drove 4 hours back. It rained the entire way. The school looked smaller, the way everything from your childhood does. The afternoon was being held in the library, and it was gentle and awkward and full of people I only half remembered. She was sitting in a chair by the window. Her left hand did not work anymore. She could still talk, slowly, and she was talking to a queue of former students. And I got into that queue and then got out of it twice because I did not know what a person says after 12 years of silence. So I walked out and went down to room 12 instead. They were packing it up. 31 years in a classroom fits into far fewer boxes than you would think. The heater still rattled. Her desk was already bare. And along the back wall, under the window, there was a stack of cardboard boxes with names written on the sides in green ink. Not class names, not year groups, names. A first name and a last name, 1 box each. I read along them the way you read a bookshelf, not really looking for anything. And then I stopped, because the 4th box from the end had my name on it in her handwriting. I sat down on the floor of that classroom and I opened it. Inside were my letters. All of them, every single one I had ever written to her. In order, the oldest at the bottom, held in bundles with elastic bands that had gone brittle and gray with age. The 3 cruel sentences from that very first Friday were right there at the bottom, in the sloping, angry handwriting of a 14-year-old boy. And above them sat 4 years of me, growing up on paper, the writing getting neater, the paper changing. I watched myself become a person in a box on a rainy afternoon. But it was not the letters that broke me. It was the notes. Clipped to the front of every bundle was an index card in her handwriting, dated. She had been tracking me. One card said, "Spelling improving. He is hiding it." Another said, "Mentioned father twice. Do not ask directly. Let him come to it." Another said, "Asked a question in class today without being called on. First time." She had been watching me that closely. She had been thinking about me on days I never knew anyone was thinking about me at all. I was not one of hundreds to her. I had a card. I had a box. Then I found the March letter, the torn page, the one where a 15-year-old boy wrote that he did not think anybody would mind. She had kept it, of course she had, and she had clipped a card to it, and on that card in green ink, she had written the date, and then 2 words, "Not yet," and underneath that, a list, "Speak to his mother," "Lunch in 12," "Check Mondays." She had made a plan.
I had written the worst sentence of my life on a scrap of paper and thrown it at a teacher, and she had quietly built a net underneath me and never once told me it was there. At the very top of the box, from the last Friday of my final year, was my half page about nothing. The lazy one. The one I wrote when I had decided I was far too old for her. And she had written back to it with a full page, the same as always, and she had kept a copy of her reply. On the card, she had written 6 words. He does not need me now. Good. She had noticed exactly what I was doing. She had known I was drifting away from her on purpose, and she had decided that was not a failure. She had decided that was the entire point.
I went back up to the library with my eyes red and my hands shaking, and I did not care at all who saw me. I got into that queue, and this time I stayed in it. When I finally reached her chair, I knelt down so she would not have to look up at me. I said her name. And this woman, 31 years and thousands of students, and half her body gone, looked at me for a second, and then said my full name, and then she said, "Room 12, lunchtimes, you always left the crusts." She remembered. She remembered what I did not eat 12 years later from a chair by a window.
I told her everything I should have said at 18. I told her I had a life, a real one, that I wrote for a living, that I was okay. I told her I had found the box, and I asked her why she kept them. She was quiet for a while, and then she said that a letter is a person handing you a piece of themselves, and you do not throw that away. You just hold it until they are strong enough to want it back. Then she said the thing I will hear for the rest of my life. She said, "I knew you would come. I just did not know when." Mrs. Okafor died 14 months later. Her family gave me the box, and it sits in my hallway cupboard, and I have never thrown out a single page of it. Here is what I learned from a woman who wrote back to a cruel boy for 4 years and never once told him he was cruel. Being believed in does not feel like anything while it is happening. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It looks like a page of green ink on a Monday morning that you barely bother to read. You do not notice it until you are sitting on a floor 12 years later, holding the proof in your hands.
So, please listen to me. Somewhere out there, right now, somebody is keeping a piece of you. A teacher, a coach, an aunt, a neighbor, someone who has a box with your name on it, or the version of that box that lives quietly in their head. They are keeping score of your small wins that nobody else ever noticed. They have not given up on you, not even in the years when you gave up on yourself. Go and find them. Say the thank you now while they can still hear it, while they can still say your name back to you. I waited 12 years, and I very nearly waited too long.
Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. It truly means the world to me that you stayed with me. If Mrs. Okafor's story moved you at all, please give this video a like and subscribe to AU Family Channel, where a brand new story is waiting for you every single week. And remember this, somebody somewhere is quietly keeping every piece of you and believing in you. So go and thank them while you still can. I will see you in the next one.